It's real important before you get started any floating to have all the tools you're going to need close at hand. I have my margin trowel, my flat trowel here, and I've got my hawk for carrying mud over to the wall. And then I have an array of straight edges here, my level, these float strips right here, which I'll explain a little bit later, and then this float strip here represents the end of the mortar bed, and it's also going to be one of the ones that will support the straight edges as I screed off the mortar. Now it's important that this one not be made plumb. It has to be parallel to this wall. Otherwise, when the field is trimmed out with these radius bullnose tiles, if this were made plumb and the wall wasn't plumb, the joint between the tile and the wall here would either get smaller or larger depending on which way the wall was leaning. Now to deliver the mud to the wall, you've got to do a little dance with the hawk and the flat trowel. At the very beginning, you want to just press it real hard. That gives it an initial coating. Then you press in a small amount, cut it off so it doesn't fall off the hawk. And then the action to get it off is kind of a twisting motion. You want to dig in like so. Now, if you don't watch your action, or if the mud is too stiff and too dry, it'll just fall off. Press it onto the hawk, cut off the excess, load up the tray. Now let's get some up on the wall. Now, when you first start putting the mud on the wall, you want to do the same thing. You want to press a real thin coat onto the wall and not really be concerned with filling it up. This makes sure that the mud, see right here, that mud has pressed in and around that wire. That allows it to hold on. If you try to build up too much, it won't press around it, and it'll just fall off. Now once you get that first skin coat on, then you can start building it out a little bit. And in this case, we're just going to be building out enough so I can seat one of the float strips in. Now, I can put this first float strip in. Now, one of the things you want to do is you want to wet down both sides of this float strip. Because if you put it up dry, what will happen is when it makes contact with the mortar, the side that hits the mortar will wet and it'll warp it out. Just kind of nestle it in there, just a little bit. Then you take the level. You woodworkers are just going to hate this. Now what I want to do is I'm keeping an eye out at the top here. I want to make sure I have at least a ½ inch right here. Don't fall. Now I have to tap in at the bottom. Okay, that looks good. Now I'm going to situate another one here and set it up just the same way. And in spite of all the sweat you see on my face, this is hard work, but it's something that I get a terrific amount of enjoyment from. So if there are any closet sculptors out there, this is your chance to have a lot of fun. Now, for on top of this sill, you want something that the mud on the face of the wall can grab onto. because otherwise it might just peel off. So smash a little mud in like so, and then come back, bam, smash it right into the corner. Now that I have my skin coat on, I'll start filling it in. If you're just starting out, don't be discouraged if a lot of mud starts dropping off the hawk or off the trowel. I mean, look at the bottom of the tub already, and I don't even have anything done. Now, one thing I should point out right here, and I hope you can see this on the camera. This trowel is curved. You can buy trowels that are pre-curved. If you buy a flat trowel, when you're flattening out the mud, there's a chance it might dig in. Now, if it digs in, whatever you do, don't pull out. Whenever you remove the trowel from the wall, always have it in motion, like so. So if it digs in, back it out and come out the other way. Now, after all this prep work and membranes and staples, we can begin to see some of the results of our work. Now, I don't start right down at the bottom. Start about 6 inches from the bottom. Move it from side to side until I feel I've been making contact with the float strips. Now, it's important that you don't push this straight edge into the float strips because you may distort them. They're just acting as guides. You want most of your pressure to be up. Now, when the straight edge fills up, carry it over to the mud board, and in one motion, just dump it off. And pick it up on the straight edges again, on the float strips again, and cut a little more off. When it fills up, you do the same thing with this as you do with the trowel. Don't just pull it away. Make sure that it's in motion when you lift it off the wall. Look at this. It's starting to be nice and flat. Now it's beginning to look like a tile job. Now up here you have to be careful because if you go too fast, you'll plop that mud up. So you want to take it a little easy. We're going to let that sit for a couple minutes and I'll get the rest of the wall here. Considering the heat generated by the lights on the set, this mortar is behaving very well. Although frequently I've had to knead the mortar to keep it loose. This is preferable to adding liquid, which can ruin the mix. Support is also crucial, and with this set not as strong as a real house, I won't be surprised if cracks appear later. Because of the way I'll be attaching the jam tiles later, I don't need a smooth surface here. Instead, I'm just applying a rough coat. At the header, I'm careful to move the trowel away from the corner. That way the mud stays up on the wire. And if I have to, I'll build up additional layers of mud. But the important thing here is to get the mud on quickly and not play around with it on the wall. Otherwise, it'll become too loose and could fall off the wall. The purpose of the straight edge is to flatten the bed, not necessarily finish it. That comes later. Having served their purpose, it's time for these float strips to go. But instead of yanking them away from the wall, I cut away their edges with a margin trowel, peel it away at the top, and then pull upwards with my other hand. That way I don't yank any mud away from the wall. As soon as I've removed the strips, I immediately press in fresh mortar into the resulting channel and give it a final troweling with the short blade of the flat trowel. Then while that's setting up, I use the trowel held flat against the screeded bed to clean up the excess that I couldn't reach with the straight edge. Now, I usually don't do this until I've floated all the walls of a particular job. But this back wall is drying out, and I need to get these low spots filled in as quickly as possible. It's simply a process of packing each depression or low spot with fresh mortar. When all these are filled in, I'll use the wood float to pare down the surface, make it nice and smooth for tiling. The most important thing here is to wait for the mortar bed to get nice and firm, otherwise you'll just gouge it with the wood float. The procedure is to press the wood float against the flattened mortar bed and use the size of it to cut down the high spots, packing in where necessary. Here where the mud is soft, it's easy for the wood float to dig in, so I'll have to proceed carefully in this section. Notice here that I'm careful to cut away from the window so the edge is supported. This wall is basically finished. I need only to trim the perimeter with the trowel, then I can turn my attention to the shower wall. There I can quickly review the procedures and address some special concerns. The first step is to key the mud into the wire and then float a column in which you can plumb your float strip. Remember, I'll just be needing one on this wall. There, that's plumb. Now, for comparison, let me show you what I started out with. Leaving this uncorrected would result in some unsightly tapers. Here's where the margin trowel is handy. I'm a little surprised and a little embarrassed at the way I'm treating these fittings. On a real job, I do tape up the fittings to protect the finish and to leave access for the plumber. Once I have the skin coat on, then I can build out the thickness prior to screeding. And around the plumbing fittings, it's simply a matter of finding different angles to get the straight edge through the congestion. The remainder can be cleaned up later with a wood float. Here I've floated in the margin and a couple of low spots large enough for the straight edge. Once the wall was screeded, I removed the float strip and filled the resulting channel. Now I'm using the wood float to pare away the excess. To make corners nice and crisp, I pare away gradually, holding the wood float against both walls. Here's yet another way to extend a flat surface. In this case, I'm cleaning up the dog leg area in front of the tub. Finally, a little touch-up work with the margin trowel, and these two walls are finished.